Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here for our Holy Cross webinar, 6 tips and tricks that you can take advantage of for some of your virtual and in-person college fairs, of college visits, excuse me. My name is Michael Plord. I'm one of the admission counselors with Holy Cross, and I'll of course be leading today's information session. Just a couple of things to note before we do kick off this webinar. We do have a recording of this video that will be made available and archived on our website that you'll be able to watch after this, so you can feel free to rewatch this if there's anything that you'd like to see again. We will also have I should say, have closed captioning available for you to take advantage of here today during the webinar itself. And we do also have a Q&A functionality where if you have any questions, anything that you may be wondering about, then you are certainly welcome to ask any questions that you may have utilizing the Q&A functionality. We have 3 current students, 3 Holy Cross students who are here with us. Elena Beatty, who is a junior at Holy Cross, Hannah Baker, also a junior, and Hannah, you are a senior at Holy Cross, I apologize, and Denny, who is a junior at Holy Cross, who will be able to give us their perspective as actual current tour guides here at Holy Cross, but also utilizing their own experience as Holy Cross, or as prospective students considering Holy Cross in their own college search process. And so in the interest of time, we will go ahead and kick it right off here, first with our 6 ways to get the most out of in-person and virtual visits. I think for us, the first piece that we really wanted to focus on is the idea of, even before you actually do a college visit, come into it thinking about what you want out of a college experience, but also understand that things may change. So don't necessarily come into it with the assumption that you absolutely know what you want out of a college experience, and understand that visit experience can very much change things along the way. And so I do want to turn this question over to our students. I'm wondering, what were some of the priorities that you may have had on your own list before you did your visits that changed along the way through your college search process? And Elena, we'll go ahead and kick it off with you.
Okay, great, thanks. So hi everyone, I'm Elena. I'm a junior at the college, and kind of some of the things I was considering when applying to Holy Cross in a number of different schools was 3 key things I can think of are kind of size, community, and academic programs. So in terms of size, I kind of knew I wanted a smaller liberal arts school. I'm from Massachusetts, so I knew I kind of wanted to be somewhat close to home, and that definitely played a part in my decision. But I also thought about different academic programs that I was interested in making that process, and kind of what stood out to me at Holy Cross versus other schools, and how I kind of came to that ultimate conclusion. So entering college, I knew I wanted to be a psychology major, but something that really interests me at Holy Cross, for example, was the Deaf Studies program. So that's kind of something that made that stand apart. And I know for other people, there might be other programs of interest that really kind of distinguish a school, and also just kind of the sense of community. So that's something I didn't really realize how much I wanted until stepping foot on Holy Cross's campus. So at a bunch of other schools, yes, everyone says community is important and how you feel involved with the community if you feel like can kind of fit in with the people on that campus. But upon Accepted Students Day and during a shadowing day where I shadowed a current Holy Cross student, I really felt that sense of community for myself and knew that that was something I needed in a college. And that's kind of what really made Holy Cross stand out, in my opinion. So those are some of the things I definitely considered along the way.
Thank you, Elena. And Hannah, I would love for you to answer the question as well.
Yeah, so similarly to Elena, I also wanted a smaller school. Liberal arts was what I was looking for. That's something that didn't change, same as Elena. When I came to Holy Cross, I did an overnight and shadowed a student, and I was just really impressed by the fact that the professor knew everyone in the class's names. It was a German class that I was shadowing in, and they were all really engaged in discussion, and that was something that really appealed to me because I felt like if I came to Holy Cross, I would have this relationship with my professors, I would get to engage with my classmates, and that has very much been my experience. One thing that I had not realized would be important to me before I started looking at colleges was residential status. So a lot of students at Holy Cross do stay on campus all 4 years, more than 90%. And I didn't realize at the time that that would be something so important to me, but I work in residence life. So I work on campus and live on campus, and having my friends around and other peers around on campus has been really nice. And that's not something I necessarily would have thought of before I started looking at colleges.
Great, thank you, Hannah. And Denny.
So same as Elena and Hannah, I had a bunch of the same things going into it. I knew I wanted a small school where I could get some closer bond with the professors. I knew I wanted to stay in the Northeast. I'm also from Massachusetts. I'm actually from Worcester, so I stayed in the same city. And I also knew I wanted a nice residential life. But when touring schools, I wasn't exactly sure about like campus, for example. So I toured some schools in cities, and I realized that I really, really like an actual campus, an area where you feel like you're on the school's grounds, and you see fellow students, and everyone there is like goes to as a student there, or faculty or staff, and it builds a nice community. So when I was touring Holy Cross, it's really stuck out to me as something that I never thought about beforehand. And I guess that really tied in well with the residential life aspect as well. As Hannah said, I was also a part of being an RA last year and working for Residence Life and Housing. So those were really important to me. And when I toured it, I learned a lot from the campus.
If I could unmute. Perfect. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate that. For the second piece, I did want to actually focus on the visit itself. And while our three panelists here, of course, when they did their own college search process, didn't necessarily look the same as it does right now with all of the virtual offerings that are out there from so many different colleges and universities. As I said, they've had a chance to be able to lead virtual visits for Holy Cross and interact with some of our students. And so I'm wondering, from your perspective, what are some of the benefits of these virtual visits? Have you been able to connect with students or make those connections in a way that may not have been otherwise possible through an in-person visit? And Hannah, we'll have you start this one off.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I think is really cool is that Holy Cross actually has all of the tour guide profiles on the admissions website. And so I've had students reach out to me directly just based on shared interests that we have. I'm very involved in the music department. So I've had people who have emailed me because my email's on the website, and we're able to actually set up a Zoom, and I can talk on and on about the music department, talk about the choirs, the music major, anything that's related. Or on the other hand, I've had people reach out about the sociology major, which is my other major. And that's just been really, really cool, because in the past, leading tours, you certainly have people on your tour who maybe have similar overlapping interests, but it can really be more personalized when you're actually reaching out to that tour guide directly. And so if you are seeing our profiles on there, please know we really do want you to reach out. We miss interacting with students in the same way we have in the past. So that's been something that has been really cool with everything going virtual. So yes, take advantage of that.
For sure. And Denny, how has it been for you as a student tour guide in this virtual world?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I became a tour guide last March as soon as the pandemic hit, so I never got to experience giving in-person tours, but I did experience one as an attendee. And I was in a large group with a lot of people, and I did get to learn a lot about the schools. And I did get to talk to the tours guides a little bit about some specific things, but it's nothing like a virtual tour. In a virtual tour, you can really reach out to a person specifically, and especially with the chat feature now, you can send out a message privately to one of the tour guides that you're interested in, or one that you share a common interest with as well. So I'm a physics major. There's a really small group of us here on campus. It's about, I believe, like 100 overall, and my class is about like 15. And that's really that's a small niche, but I don't hear a lot of questions about that usually. But when I was giving out my virtual tours, I've had a lot of people message me about that and say that they were interested. So that's something that a virtual tour really brings out. Like, it really gets to let you connect with the tour guide even more, and me with the attendees. But also with a virtual tour, you actually see more of campus than you would actually doing it. So there are some places where we just cannot include them in the stop for various reasons. I know, Mike, you said Kimball, they tried to, which is our dining hall, you tried to include that every year, but we never got a chance to. On the virtual tour, you get to see Upper Kimball, you get to see Kimball Quad, and you get to look all around in there, do a 360. So it gives a nice view to see more of campus than you normally would during an actual tour, even though you're not seeing it in person.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And I did also just want to remind all of our attendees here that we do have our Q&A functionality available. So if you do have any direct questions for our students, we will have some time at the end to be able to direct directly towards them. So feel free to utilize that Q&A function if you have anything that's currently on your mind. So I did want to shift gears here a little bit. We talked a little bit, of course, there about the virtual visits and some of the opportunities and benefits that come there. But we certainly do hope to be able to offer in-person visits. And especially if you're a junior right now, moving forward into the future, I think many colleges and universities are going to be opening up those in-person visit opportunities. So there's certainly some things that you want to keep in mind as well with that chance to be able to actually get on a campus and experience the community. And I think the third piece that we often see with students in their college search process is to make sure that they try the food. And I wanted to put this one over to Elena in her own college search process. Did you get a chance to be able to try the food at any colleges or universities that you were looking at?
Yes, so that's a great question because I think it's something sometimes we forget about, but obviously you're eating 3 meals a day at the school. So that is a big part of ultimately your college decision. So thinking back to Holy Cross, I know that I did in fact try the food during the accepted students day, since like on the tour you don't, like Denny was saying, that's not usually a part of the in-person tour. However, at a bunch of different colleges and universities, that was always something I did. So I ate in the dining hall, and I thought that the unique part of that experience was not only just kind of seeing what food they have to offer and the variety and how it changes every day, but also seeing students in kind of a setting outside of the classroom. So I think that's really crucial to seeing if you kind of identify with the students, feel as though you'd fit in and it would be a good fit for you. I think the dining hall is a great way to see that happen because it's really a sense of community, especially on Holy Cross's campus. Everyone loves going to Kimball or main dining hall, socializing with friends, even doing work. Before remote times, that was a popular place to just sit, enjoy the day there. So I think I would definitely recommend if you're doing in-person tours, eventually when the world gets back to normal, that's a big part. I think seeing the dining hall, seeing the food, seeing the people is all something that I think is really important.
Absolutely, yeah, and we're all looking forward to that return to normalcy, hopefully soon for sure, but especially as it relates to the college search process. And I think with the fourth point that we did want to focus and highlight here in your college search process and in your visits is really the opportunity to be able to get to know the campus community, whether that's by talking with admission counselors, whether that's by talking with students. And so I wanted to turn this one over. Hannah, I'm wondering in your own college search process, did you have the opportunity to be able to sort of have those conversations to be able to, again, get to know the community at large?
Yeah, definitely. So I toured Holy Cross the summer after my junior year of high school, and there happened to be an info session happening that day. And so I went, and the admissions counselor that was giving the info session happened to be my admissions counselor. I'm from Vermont. And so this admissions counselor, he started talking to me, and he's like, "Oh, I work with students from Vermont. What's your name?" And so we started talking about some shared interests, and then months later, I'm signing up for my interview with Holy Cross, and he immediately reaches out and goes, "Hannah, I remember you. We met this day." And then flash forward a couple months later, it's accepted students day, and there's floods of people in the Hogan Ballroom. And he immediately runs over to me, and I remember my parents were like, "What is going on? How does he know who you are?" And he was like, "I'm so glad you're here. I'm so happy you came to campus." And as it turns out, I was spending the night with a current student, and he had intentionally matched me with someone who was in the choir so that I could have that experience and talk to her. And as it turns out, she ended up being one of my best friends here. So just having that connection, I really felt like he got to know me and knew my interests, and definitely gave me a sense of the community at Holy Cross, and knowing that, faculty and staff, students, everyone's really interested in each other and each other's lives. And that immediately was evident to me.
That's fantastic. I wish I could say I was that admission counselor, but I'm glad to know that our Holy Cross staff is doing a great job to be able to make that outreach and make those connections with students that can be so valuable in the process. And Denny, I would love for you to be able to talk a little bit about this as well. You mentioned, of course, being from the Worcester community. Did you get the chance to be able to get to know the Holy Cross community well, whether it was, again, through your interactions locally or, of course, with students on campus?
Yes, so I also toured Holy Cross, like I mentioned, and it was also the summer before my senior year. But even before then, I knew a lot of people that. So, for example, my neighbors across from me were in my house in Worcester. Both attended Holy Cross. Both were students there. They ended up they didn't know each other at the time when they were both students, and then ended up getting married later on. And it was a nice story that they told me about. But they were both alums, and they always had great things to say about the school. And then my calc teacher in junior year of high school was a Holy Cross grad, and she reached out, and I reached out to her. I was like, hey, like I'm really considering Holy Cross. I love it. By this point, I was thinking about touring it, but I wasn't sure. And she said how great the alumni connection is. And this is something that you hear about Worcester all the time. That you hear almost all the time that Holy Cross is one of the best alumni connections out of almost every school in the state. And you get to know them very well when you're an undergrad here. So, for example, I've been already in contact with a couple of grads talking about maybe how a day looks like in their job and things like that. And I can text them anytime I want. I have their numbers. And this was something that I knew even before I attended the Holy Cross, just living in Worcester, what my teachers told me, what my neighbors told me. And when I actually I came here and I am experiencing it myself now. So this was something that really pushed me about Holy Cross. And it was something that I heard even before I even toured it. And it shows how tight knit our community is even after we graduate.
For sure, yeah. The alumni community is really an incredible group, certainly at Holy Cross. But I think it's also a great resource to keep in mind with many of the colleges and universities that you're looking at. It's always nice to be able to know that connection back to Holy Cross and that influence that Holy Cross can continue to have, or a college, I should say, can continue to have on a graduate well beyond their time at as 4 years as a student. The fifth point that I did want to, I think, focus on here is not only do you want to get to know the actual college community itself and get to know some of the students that are there, but I think it's equally important to be able to get to know the surrounding community that is also a part of the campus. Certainly in our case, it's the Worcester community, the city of Worcester. And so I'm wondering from our students, Elena, we'll start this off with you. Did you have that opportunity to be able to get to know the city itself during your own college tours?
Yes, so I think I'm about 45 minutes from Worcester, so I was very familiar with the area. And growing up, my grandmother lived in Connecticut, so driving by Holy Cross was a very common thing for my family. And I think I really liked Holy Cross because it is in the city of Worcester, but it feels kind of, isolated up on the hill. So you feel like the Worcester area is really there at your fingertips, but also if you want to stay on campus, that's also a possibility. And Worcester itself is the second largest city in New England, which is, you kind of forget about that, but it is a really big city and there's so much going on. So I think before coming to Holy Cross, I tried out restaurants in the Worcester area, realized that I would not ever be bored, but there's so much to do in Worcester. And kind of aside from Holy Cross, on some of my other college visits too, the area outside of the school was really what made a difference to me. Whether it was kind of close to other big cities, whether it was in a rural area, that all kind of made a difference. I think Holy Cross is really nice in the fact that it's only 50 minutes from Boston, a little over 3 hours to New York City, and about an hour as well to Providence. So it's really centrally located as well, which is great. And Holy Cross does a really good job too of allowing students to experience the Worcester community. So although we have a strong community itself on campus, we're always getting emails about different events that are happening in the Worcester area. We're also, a lot of students are involved with volunteer opportunities in the Worcester area, kind of giving back to the Worcester community and getting to experience a little bit of the city itself.
That's a great point for sure. Again, getting to know the city that's around you is such an integral part, especially as it relates to the college experience, because you're not just spending that time on campus, but you're also, again, getting that chance to be able to live and be a part of a new area. And Denny, I would love for you to be able to chat a little bit about this as well. You had mentioned some of the opportunities that you've had within Worcester, certainly as a Worcester resident, but now, of course, as a student. What are some of the ways that you get a chance to be able to interact with the city?
So we have a program on campus called SPUD, Student Programs for Urban Development, that is run mostly by the chaplains. And there are a lot of projects, community work throughout the city. I believe there's a couple hundred different projects. And the one I do is called Plumley Village, and it's some tutoring kids at lower income neighborhoods after school. They come after class ends at about 3 o'clock for them, and I stayed with them from 3 to 5, and I help them with their homework and do anything that helps them. Some are very young, so I even help them learn how to read as well. And the fun fact is, my mom is a school teacher in the city, and this is very close to her school. So some of the kids I tutor, she actually has as students. So they realize my last name, they go, oh, hey, is your mom our teacher? And I didn't know that on the first day. So it was nice, to be able to to give back to the same students that my mom is teaching, and to have that connection with them, because I myself also grew up in the Worcester public school system. And I had English as second language, as most of those kids do. So it was nice to give back to people who I was in their shoes when I was young. So it was nice to be able to connect with community like that and help out as much as I could. And it's something I really wanted to do because I went through it. So I know what it feels like.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Denny. And the last piece that we wanted to focus on here, I think obviously when all is said and done, especially after you do, whether it's in-person visits or virtual visits, a lot of that information can sort of blend together over a period of time after you start to get to know these colleges, after you start to interact and have all these different conversations. So I think the last piece of advice that we want to give out there is just to make sure you stay organized, you take your notes, and you really have that chance to be able to evaluate at the end of all those visits and say, these are the things that stood out to me about these particular colleges and universities. And Hannah, you had mentioned earlier that you had that chance to sort of be able to make that kind of pros and cons list at the end of it all. I'm wondering, how did that shape out for you to be able to keep things organized through your notes?
Yeah, definitely something that I think is important. I'm all for, paying attention to how you feel when you step onto campus or even when you're just connecting with a student on the website. That's all really important. But there are also details that you may think you're going to remember, but then you actually forget after you leave the tour. So one thing that I did during my college search, I was making pros and cons lists and I was just making note. Oh, I really liked how the dining system worked here. Oh, I love that study abroad options are prevalent here. Anything like that that stands out to you, or oh, I actually didn't love this about this school, something like that. You may think you're going to remember it, but then after the fact, especially if you're touring over the course of a year and a half, anything like that, it does all start to blend together. The other thing, this is kind of related to notes, I think pictures are always helpful if you take some pictures on campus. It was unfortunately raining when I toured Holy Cross, but I still could not get over how beautiful it was. And that was something I held on to. And so even looking at those pictures, that was something that reminded me, okay, I really felt good about, walking around this campus. Like I really loved the way it looked. I could see myself walking around. But definitely I would recommend taking notes.
For sure, yeah. And sometimes when you visit a campus, even in inclement weather, sometimes it's a benefit because if you can see yourself on campus during a bad day like that, just imagine how it can be, of course, even throughout the rest of the year. And so those are our big six that we did want to focus on. As I said, we do have our Q&A functionality that's available here. And we have a couple of questions that I would love to be able to have our students address that some of the attendees, I should say, have put out here. Just the first one I wanted to focus on, that one of the questions is, as a junior, when do you recommend we reach out and speak with a counselor or do an interview? I think as a junior, now is a great time to sort of do that introduction, to be able to send that email to your admission counselor and just say, hey, I'm a student from this area, from this high school, and I'm interested in your school. And just to be able to sort of do that intro right now, I think is a fantastic thing. As you start to look further into the more detailed experiences like interviews, check those websites. Make sure that you're just taking a look at the admission websites because each school is going to offer different timelines, different sign-up opportunities. And so just making sure that you're up on that information. And again, going back to this idea of staying organized and taking notes, this is also a great time to make sure that you're organized in the admission processes and knowing what schools are looking for. We have a question here. Can the students discuss in 1 to 2 words what best describes the Holy Cross community from your perspective? And so, Elena, we'll go ahead and have you kick this one off.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would say words that immediately come to mind are it's an involved community. Students are pretty driven and also caring. So I think like walking around campus, you can see so many friendly faces. People are doing common gestures like opening the door for one another, but that just shows kind of that caring trait of many Holy Cross students. Also involved because I think regardless of what your interests are, all Holy Cross students they're balancing a lot of different activities in addition to their academics. And that's kind of where I put the term driven, because Holy Cross is a rigorous school and students are really driven to do well. I think we do have a lot of fun and do other things, but academics is a large part of the Holy Cross experience. And I think that all students kind of can relate on that regardless of your major or your activities. Everyone wants to do well and is pushing each other to succeed in a kind of a collaborative environment. So I think those are some of the words I would use to describe the community.
Great. And I'll actually pass this question around to all three of us. Hannah, why don't you take it next?
I was going to take it in the same direction as Elena. I'm going to say present. As Elena kind of alluded to, students are really involved. People have really interesting interests, and you have a a wide set of interests too. So I think that's something that's really cool. Even though we're all at the same school, there's so many different things going on, different majors, different extracurricular interests. And then the other one I'm going to say is collaborative. I think exactly like Elena was saying, there's kind of this theme at a lot of rigorous academic schools that there's a lot of competition, and that is so not the case at Holy Cross. I've never felt that, and I think that's pretty unique. So I think that would definitely be the two things that come to mind for me.
Absolutely. And Denny.
I'm also going to say that involved. That's a huge one, especially on our campus, and welcoming. So there's the reason I say involved is like Hannah said as well, is that there's a lot of people do a lot of Holy Cross. They join a lot of clubs. I know my freshman year I joined too many clubs, and there's a wide variety of things you can do. So I did ballroom dance, which I never did beforehand, and I was pretty bad at it, but you know, it was fun to do. And there's things from club sports. There's HC First Gen Club, which I'm in. There's Lasso. There's also things like Finance Club, which will help you, which is a nice club to be in if you're interested in business or econ. So you know, there's a bunch of different things to do on campus, and everyone wants to do as many as possible. Sometimes it's too many, but it's very welcoming, and you can get involved on campus very easily here.
That's awesome, and I applaud your willingness to try ballroom dance. That's a fantastic club to kick off in your freshman year. We have a couple other questions here that I would love to pose to our students. This is sort of a dual question here. One is, what is your favorite spot on campus? And the other is, are there any traditions unique to Holy Cross that I should be on the lookout for? And again, I'll pass this one around to all three. Denny, we'll have you start this one if you wouldn't mind.
My favorite spot on campus has to be I think it's a science library. And I know it's like a weird place, it's like a library, you know, I have classes in there. I'm a physics major, all my exams are in there. So I've had stressful nights in there, but it's kind of relatively new. I think it's built 2010. It has very nice AC. So for the warm summer nights and when it gets really, really, really hot, especially when you come on campus, nice place to study for the spring finals, especially. And Science Cafe is in there as well, which is my favorite place on campus to eat. I love the Science Cafe. Their sandwiches are really, really good. And they have a lot of places outside of Science Cafe we can study as a group. They have individual study rooms, and they also have a library. So there's a bunch of different ways to study on there and hang out with friends if you need to. So I think that's probably my most favorite spot on campus.
Yeah, the Science Cafe isn't just a place to go if you're into science. They do really have some great sandwiches if you get that chance. Elena, we'll have you go next.
I would honestly say my favorite place on campus is probably Kimball. Kind of going with the food question I answered before, I think obviously like that's a great place to go for meals, but I also enjoy it because it's kind of the place where you see everyone. So if like you run into people who you normally wouldn't see in classes maybe or in your dorm, and it's kind of like all grades would be in that same place. I also think like especially this year is a little bit different, but in past years it was a great place to just go kind of unwind, get a meal with friends, and kind of not worry about work for that like 1 hour of time that you're eating a meal, which was kind of nice. Yeah, so I really enjoy spending time in Kimball.
Very nice. Food is an overarching theme for sure. Yeah. And Hannah.
My favorite place has to be Campion House. That's where our chaplain's office is. And it is really a house. So it feels very homey, especially, you know, freshman year, you're making that adjustment to college. I loved just going and sitting in the Campion living room. They always have tea and coffee, and they have students that bake cookies every day. So you go in, you make a cup of tea, you get a cookie, and you just do some reading on the couch. And it is absolutely wonderful. It just feels very comforting, and the chaplains are all great. They'll walk through and they'll just chat with you, and they have a lot of great traditions in Campion House too. They always invite students to come help decorate their Christmas tree and just do all sorts of events. It's a really awesome place to hang out.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for that. We have a few other questions here I want to pose to you. I'm wondering, some colleges ask you to choose a major based on what you're doing. I'm wondering for you, how did majors programs play into your college search, and ultimately maybe why you decided to attend Holy Cross? I'm sorry, Hannah, we'll have you start this one off.
Yeah, definitely. So I do not think I knew exactly what I was going to study yet. One thing I love about Holy Cross is that we actually have common area requirements like most liberal arts schools. So that was actually why I became a sociology major. But certainly the music department was something that I was paying attention to when I was touring schools. And definitely, as I mentioned, getting to come and do an overnight, getting to hang out with a music student, go to her music class, go to choir rehearsal, talk to the choir director. Those were all things that completely stood out to me and I was really paying attention to. Choir is a big part of my life, and I knew I was going to be spending many hours a week in choir. So I think that was something that I was on the lookout for. And the music department at Holy Cross is small, but we have really great faculty. So we have a lot of great traditions, and the professors all know us. We have a big music major dinner every year, and that kind of community was just something that I found really appealing, while also getting some great education in music.
Elena, why don't we have you take this one next?
Yeah, so entering college, I kind of did know what I wanted to major in, but I think that that's probably not the majority of students. I think entering college, there's so many different areas that you can explore. And a lot of the times in high school, you maybe didn't have exposure to some of those classes to even know that that might be an interest of yours. So I entered Holy Cross knowing I wanted to do psychology and education actually, as well as a minor. So I think something though that Holy Cross does really well is the advising program. So you don't have to declare your major until the end of sophomore year. So you do have a lot of time to explore, but you are assigned an advisor at the beginning of your freshman year, not necessarily in the major you will end up declaring. But for me, since I had said education and psych were some of my interests, I got paired with a professor in the education department. And that was a really helpful way to kind of learn more about the department, the classes. I was able to ask my advisor any questions like about different areas I was considering. Do you think I would like this class based on some of my interests? And I think Holy Cross does that really well in guiding students. But I also think that going to some other schools, like major is definitely a big part of how you can decide upon a school, kind of to answer the broader question that was asked. Just knowing kind of the area that you want to study can be a big part of your decision.
Absolutely. And we have another question. This is for your roles as tour guides. Do you ever get anxious meeting new people, especially in this role as a tour guide where you're essentially asked to go in front of a group of strangers and then start a conversation? Do you ever get anxious in that role? Denny, we'll start off with you.
Yes, to sum it up, yes, you do. Especially so my first tour guide, obviously, like I said before, I entered as a pandemic, so my first time doing it was very untraditional in terms of it was online, and it was on Zoom, so it was a little bit different. I think it wasn't as nerve wracking as it would be in real life, having an actual group of people in front of you. But I'm someone who usually likes public speaking and like that. I like that personal factor, so I don't know. I think I would. I think I would have preferred that, but you do get anxious a little bit, and there's also sometimes it's difficult because you only know so many things. Like I'm not, for example, like I'm a physics major. I don't know much about English, and I don't know much about like that aspect of it. But I do know who you can go talk to. But I always get anxious at like when someone does ask me a question about something I'm not sure about. Am I helping them enough? Am I helping them find the right resources? So it's definitely that anxiety. But after like the first couple minutes, you get over it, and it's just like you enjoy it. You enjoy sharing your experiences, answering new questions, and I think that makes a difference.
How about you, Hannah?
Can I ask you to just rephrase it? My internet cut out just a little bit when you were asking. Sorry.
No, that's okay. We're wondering, do you ever get anxious in that meeting, that first meeting of families when you're there leading a tour, whether it's virtual or in person?
Okay, thank you. I think maybe at first I did because I was really worried about, oh, what if I don't mention something that they have questions about, or what if I don't know the answer? And I think just learning that families and prospective students are really here to talk to you about your experience, and if you don't know the answer, we can always direct them to admissions counselors. And so that's something that I've kind of gotten more comfortable with, especially as I've seen, how much it means to students to get to talk to current students. I mentioned I work in residence life, and I've worked in first year buildings for the past couple of years. And last year I had a student come and they were living in my building, and she was like, "Hey, I remember you. You gave my tour 2 years ago." And that was just really cool to me that, she remembered the tour and she felt like it gave her a good picture of Holy Cross. And so I think after that, I've just been able to, feel better about this is really just about us connecting with students. So
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And the last few questions that we have here are really related to COVID and its impact on not only the visit process, but the admission process. What I certainly want to say from the admission counselor standpoint is that we certainly understand that COVID has had a universal impact on really all students, regardless of where you're coming from, and in a variety of ways, certainly as it relates to extracurricular activities, things that you've been involved in previously, and of course, we're not able to continue that involvement with as a result of COVID. So that's something that I think all admission officers and admission counselors, I should say, across the country have an understanding of. So it's not something I would be too worried about in the admission process. I think it's always worth letting schools know in your college application process that these are opportunities I would have been a part of had it been available, or this is a leadership role I had hoped to take on had it been available to me. So really being able to let us know about that is probably the best way to address it. But beyond that, I think many colleges and universities out there have that understanding that, again, things have been curtailed really, again, universally across the world as a result of the pandemic. Similarly, with how it affects the admission process, again, we're sort of reading these applications with that grain of salt in the back of our minds that things are completely different in so many different ways, not only from an extracurricular standpoint, but also from an academic standpoint, with online learning changing everything for schools, for students, for counselors, for everybody involved. So we certainly do have that understanding as part of the process when we're reading applications. Another great question: due to COVID, in-person visits may not always be an option, but also families may not feel comfortable visiting a campus, even if it does become an option. Would that be a disadvantage? The answer is absolutely not. It would really just be a matter of, again, conveying that to us in the process. And there are so many different ways to stay in contact with admission offices, whether it's by contacting your admission counselor directly, in the application itself, Common Application and Coalition Application, which are two that Holy Cross accepts. Both have additional info sections as well as COVID sections that students can add more to, again, some of these pieces that they may want to address in the process. So we always recommend, if that's a concern that you have in your mind, bring that up in the admission process, bring that up in an email to an admission counselor, and we'll certainly keep that in mind moving forward. Another question: do you think it would be worth driving by a campus and walking around the town, or do you recommend waiting until in-person visits are available? I'm wondering, from your perspective as students, I know all three of you are on campus right now, if I'm remembering correctly. We are in person at the moment for the spring semester. Have you had a chance to sort of see families walk around, or do you think you would recommend families come to campus at this point if it's possible? Elena, why don't we start that with you?
So yes, I am living on campus in a junior dorm, and to be honest, I haven't really seen that this semester, but I know in the past that that's been something people do visit campus frequently, even when tours aren't a thing just coming. I know in my own experience I did that, even if it wasn't a formally scheduled tour. Sometimes I would just take a drive by, and it can be very helpful because, again, you see students walking around, you can see different academic buildings, you can see kind of how contained the campus is, the layout of it. Even driving in the Worcester area could be helpful to see. But also, if that's due to COVID, if that's not an option for you or your family, or you live too far away to make that work, I do think that the virtual tours we've been giving this past semester are equally as valuable. I think that, like Mike had said before, that now there's different stops on the tour that you might have not seen before, and I think that's really cool. It's also a very real life experience. You feel like you're walking through campus. The quality of all the buildings and everything is really cool. So I think even taking advantage of that, asking students questions, reaching out to any of the tour guides on the website if you have a similar interest, all of those, in addition to just walking through campus, I think are great ways to learn more about Holy Cross or other colleges as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And I think with no questions left, I do want to just close our webinar off here on one last piece from our students. Is there any one piece of advice that you may be able to provide to our prospective students? Thinking back, kind of having you travel back in time to your own junior year, starting out that college search process, is there something you would have told yourself as that junior in high school that may have influenced your own college search process? And I am admittedly putting them a little bit on the spot here, but we will go ahead and start with Hannah. We'll have you try it out.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was starting interviews for colleges, I got really nervous and I was worried about saying the right thing that would impress my interviewer. And I think if I could give any advice, it's that, you're just trying to find the right fit for you. And you just want to be yourself in those interviews, and certainly ask questions about the school too. Ask questions so that you can learn more about whatever school you're learning about, whether it's Holy Cross. And definitely, if you can, reach out to students. So as I mentioned, we're all on the website and we love talking to students. So if there's specific questions you have, or you just want to chat with someone, I know a lot of tour guides, I'm pretty sure we'd all be pretty happy to set up a Zoom, just answer questions, just tell you about our experiences, but do whatever you can to learn about the school, even if, like we've been talking about, you can't physically come to campus.
Great. And Denny.
Yeah, so one big piece of advice I have is don't worry as much as know what your interest is in, like academic programs, but don't worry about your major as much as a lot of people think you should, or as you think you should, because I was in all 4 years of high school. I thought I was going to be an engineering major, and I'm a physics major, which isn't too far off. But don't focus too much about your majors, because especially when you go to liberal arts school, there's a lot you can do with your degree. And I think it's more important to focus on what you're interested, something that you'd like, instead of something that you think you should do. Because at the end of the day, if you like your classes, if you enjoy what you're doing, you're gonna you can do anything you want with that, and you'll be more diverse in your background. So for example, I am a physics major, but I have interviews for internships to be an engineer again for this summer. So I don't think it's as big of a deal focusing on your major. I think it's better to focus on what you like to do and what you want to do. And especially at a liberal arts school where you do take a lot of classes. I've taken philosophy classes, I'm in a religion class, I have a diverse background, and I've explored what I like to do as well. So instead of being just a straight up engineer, I'd like to do a little bit more people aspects, or maybe get more involved with the clientele aspect of it instead of the actual design process, and vice versa. So it's more important to focus on what you'd like to do rather than what your major is going to be.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Denny. And Elena, we'll have you close it off for us.
I guess a piece of advice I would give is kind of just when you're going on these tours or exploring schools, just be open to just like hearing about the experiences. You might come in kind of with a closed mindset of I want this, this, and this, but along the way, those things kind of might change, and you might see that a school really just stands out to you in a different way. I also would say that a big thing is just kind of trusting your gut. So I, like Hannah said, I think the pros and cons list is super helpful, and something that I didn't physically write down, but kind of mentally had in my head, like going back to schools and thinking, what did I like and didn't like? But I think at the end, you get a general feeling of how that school made you feel. If you can kind of see yourself there, want like a home away from home, a comforting, nice, welcoming feeling. So I think that would be my piece of advice. You kind of, what you want, and you're the only person kind of who knows where you want to spend the next 4 years. So I think it's important to trust your instincts.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for not only those pieces of advice, but really for the tips and tricks along the way. We hope that was helpful in your own college search process as you start to think about the colleges and universities that you're considering, and as you start to shape that list. We have our contact information here in the chat box. So if you do have any questions moving forward, you are welcome to reach out to us at any time. As I mentioned, this recording will be archived on our website, so you're welcome to revisit it at any point if you have anything that you'd like to take a look at one more time. Best of luck to everybody in your college search process. Hope everything goes well. And thank you all so much for taking the time to join our webinar. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.